We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.
The moment of silence that you have just heard is for a way of life that seems to be rapidly disappearing from our experience, not only in America, but also in the world in general. And what we're witnessing right now is something quite extraordinary, actually, with what's taking place with Lance Armstrong. And I'm going to play you a little clip right now, and this is
So who's your favorite?
This is going to be telling you where this is all going. Okay? This is going to be a public service announcement as to where we're taking what's happening with Lance Armstrong and, to a lesser extent, Manti Te. This is where it's all headed, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Here.
As we grasp at victory, there is a touch, an evil seed growing, spreading in our midst. Shout out his name.
you just heard was 2 minutes of hate. And it's from the 1984 version of the film 1984, which is the cinematic portrayal of the novel written by one George Orwell. 2 minutes of hate. In that scene, if you're familiar with the movie, there's a room, an auditorium filled with people, Winston Smith being one of them, and his potential lover, another. And in that room, on a screen, they are projecting the picture of the enemy. Not the enemy itself, but a picture of the enemy, a fictional enemy, a psychopomp, a portrait of some kind of projection of their own fear, their own loathing, their own angst. And for 2 minutes, the entire auditorium swells into a cacophony of hate. It's a semi-cathartic moment, not completely cathartic. It's controlled catharsis. And then after the 2 minutes are up, a triumphant soundtrack begins to fill the air, and they feel that they are vindicated, victorious, even if for a moment, over the phantasms of oppression, control, and tyranny. And this is what's happening. This is what's taking place right now. You can see it right before your very eyes with what's happening with Lance Armstrong. And again, to a lesser extent, Manti Te. Yesterday was Manti Te's day to take it on the chin. We're going to talk about him. But in the first part of the show here, we're going to talk about Lance Armstrong and what I call the nation of the lie. And Lance Armstrong hasn't spent one day in court yet. That will come, I guarantee you. There are lawyers who are sharpening their culinary knives right now, and they can't wait to stick one right in Lance Armstrong. Why? Because there's money involved. There's money. He's going to have to protect his assets. No matter how he accrued those assets, he'll have to protect them. And I'm sure he'll make some deals here and some deals there and try and save a little bit for himself, redeem his public image, and try and get back into the public eye on some level, whether it's running or cycling. But before he does that, he's going to run the gauntlet, and the gauntlet's already lined up. I was reading Rick Riley, who's a sports writer from Sports Illustrated. You know, Rick Riley used to be actually pretty good. Totally lost his fastball. And Riley's column essentially said, hey, thanks for the apology, but no thanks. And I can understand where Rick Riley is coming from. Why? Because Rick Riley was duped. Rick Riley and all of his sports writers, they were all duped. Now they all feel like, you know what? You screwed us over. You fooled us. We were naive enough to fall for your story while there were significant pieces of evidence around that suggested, you know what, you were doping. But we didn't care. You were so vehement. You were so successful. You were so strong. And they absolutely shelved their ability to be neutral, objective, detached, even driven by any kind of curiosity to find out what's really going on. And it's not just Rick Riley. It's Charlie Rose. It's the guys from 60 Minutes. I mean, you name it, Jeremy Schaap, Dick Schaap. You know, they were all taken in. And why? Why? Because number one, we worship heroes, and number two, Lance Armstrong had help. There are people that go all the way up to the highest levels of the administration that were helping Lance Armstrong. Judges helped Lance Armstrong. TV networks helped Lance Armstrong. Lance Armstrong was making people billions of dollars, okay? Not millions, billions of dollars. From Nike to all the bike manufacturers, the bike manufacturing equipment, to the networks, to newspapers, to candy bar companies, to sport drinks, you name it, Lance Armstrong lined the pockets for a lot of people. And so you had somebody who was successful, who was making money, who had a good story. He overcame cancer, not once but twice, and not just any cancer. Cancer in the one place I guarantee you as a man, you don't want to get cancer. And he overcame that. And not only did he overcome that, but it was through his rigorous training and his dedication to success that allowed him to achieve such great levels of mastery over mind and body and the vagaries of misfortune and even tragedy. And it was all a lie. It was all a lie. Yes, he did those things, but he had a lot of help. He had a lot of help on a physiological level. It was a lie, and he was telling himself it was a lie. And instead of being contemplative and reflective, which is, by the way, one thing that a liar or a sociopath can't really do, because if they do, then everything cracks and falls apart. Lance Armstrong went on the attack. He went after people. He had the money. He had the resources. He had the network of people in place on the legal side of things that allowed him to be the big dog, to push people around, to shut them up, to shut them down, to shut them out. He did what he had to do. This is, by the way, the same kind of behavior that crime bosses will exhibit. They will do what they have to do. They don't care who they really hurt or who they really step on. They're not even really that concerned about public opinion. They're completely detached from any kind of relationship with their conscience. Now, I want you to think about this, and I want you to think about the big picture, because that's where we're going. We're ultimately going to go and look at the big picture, and we're going to attempt to see why this is important right now and why it's important to not allow it to simply remain as a point of stasis. You see, what's happening here is that because sports have taken on such a significant role in our society and our culture, it is the one area, and this is what my good friend Winter Dragon Sarson was talking about yesterday on Facebook. It's the one area where there is, at the very least, some kind of investigative angle. Unfortunately, almost after it's been too late. But something does occur. And then guess what? Things get played out in the realm of public opinion in sports and like no other. Sports is a collective experience. It's a shared experience. We share it viscerally when a game is being played, whether something fantastic happens or something lousy happens. We feel it as one. We have one emotion, generally. Unless you're on the other team, you have another emotion. But even then, that's one. So now what we have here in the realm of sports is the same kind of collective experience taking place in the court of public opinion. I was watching the wife of Frankie, what's his name, Hewer, one of Lance's teammates. And one of the guys that Lance pushed around. And apparently his wife was pushed around too by Lance. And the look on her face and what came out of her was, how do I describe it? Filled with vitriol, vindictiveness, almost, for lack of a better term, hate. I mean, it was pretty visceral. She hated this man. Hated him. And what came off the tongue and the pen of Rick Riley isn't that far removed from what she was feeling and experiencing. It's hate. Hate. So what are we doing now? We're beginning to craft this culture and this medium where hate becomes the most immediate response, the most immediate reaction. How many people on the left, raise your hand, do you think hate Alex Jones? How many people on the right do you think hate Barack Hussein Obama? There's a lot of hate out there. And what we're experiencing right now is Lance Armstrong as the wicker man. He's the wicker man. He is the object of hate and scorn. And yet, there is no catharsis. There is no closure. There is no healing. There is none. Why? Well, it's because people don't really understand the dynamic that they're literally being led through. So let's go back. Let's talk about how we got here. We know where it's going. Where it's going is a public lynching. And Lance Armstrong won't be the last person, trust me. We are moving to a moment in time where collective hate will be a concentrated and theatrical production. You think I'm kidding? I'm not. I am not. I'll guarantee you within 2 to 3 years, there will be shows on TV that will punch your hate buttons like you won't believe it. It all started, by the way, with Osama bin Laden. He was the first man we were supposed to hate. Am I right? Maybe Saddam Hussein. There was a object of scorn and vilification. And then, of course, bin Laden. At one point, some people thought they were the same person. That was the beauty of the mind control and the program after 9/11. They had morphed Saddam Hussein and Osama bin Laden into kind of one titanic ogre, one beast, even though both of them really had very little to do with the other. And this was the genius, the absolute genius of the post-traumatic programming of 9/11. But we've got to go back. We've got to go back in time to understand why we support lies and why we lie in general as a nation. We lie as a species. We have to lie. Sometimes lying, we have to lie because we have to survive. Sometimes we have to tell ourselves lies to be in jobs that are soul-crushing. But we have bills to pay. We have children to support. We have taxes that need to be collected. So we tell ourselves small lies to get us through the day or the night, to bring in a paycheck. Or we tell ourselves lies to stay in the relationships that are no longer fulfilling. Or sometimes we have to tell lies in order to stay under the radar. There are at times, and I'm not saying that we have to be virtuous and true all the time. Trust me on this. There are lies of self-defense that at some point in time, if you had to use them, you would. Trust me. Trust me. When those people were headed towards execution during the Spanish Inquisition, how many of them really decided they were going to change their name and take Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior and repent in that moment and do it and get it done with and have their lives changed? Probably very few. No, they did it because they wanted to save their lives, or they wanted to save the lives of people around them because they could provide for them. So there are times when lies can actually be very beneficial, but there are times when lies will absolutely and utterly crush any kind of semblance of authenticity and true exchange between any individual. Let's go back in time. Where did it all start? Well, I think you have to go back, at least in this country, to the American Revolution. And the first lie that took place during the American Revolution and after was that all men were created equal. Well, that really wasn't the case now, was it? Because what happened is that we had a number of people who were considered 3/5. That's how slaves were considered. That's how they were framed. 3/5. They weren't even a full person. They were 3/5 of a person. You had the 3/5 rule. So straight out of the gate, from the jump, all men were created equal. Not in that scenario. First lie. And then ultimately began to create more lies on a collective or a national level, treaties that were signed and then broken with first people here. And so we have the first layer of denial, we have the first layer of deceit, we have the first layer of lying and going back on our word as territories that were given to the first people shrunk further and further and further. So it goes all the way back to the inception of this country. And then it gets deeper and deeper and deeper. You know, we can move forward at any point in time. Now, what's the real story behind the Civil War? What's the real story behind what happened in 1913 with the advent of the Federal Reserve? What's the real story behind the Lusitania or the Titanic or the Hindenburg? What's really behind these events? How do they shape our consciousness? And where does public opinion get moved and altered and shifted in the telling or the retelling of the story as a fictional account or a semi-fictional account, which then becomes a lie? What about World War I and the lies that were told in order for us to enter that war? And then what happened after World War I was we saw the seeds of the rise of the Third Reich through the Balfour Declaration, the Treaty of Versailles, the reparations, bankrupting Germany. Everything that would occur during World War II happens at the end of World War I. And how do we get into World War II? Again, another lie. Pearl Harbor in the Pacific Theater. We have a Pearl Harbor moment. The Pearl Harbor moment was when we got into that war with Japan. We're fighting a war on two fronts. And of course, the Navy, the government, actually knew what was happening. They knew that there was going to be an attack on the USS Arizona in Pearl Harbor. It was going to happen. They knew ahead of time. Hell, I've seen the movie, Tora, Tora, Tora. If you don't believe me, watch Tora, Tora, Tora. So now we're starting to accumulate these lies, and they're getting bigger and deeper and forcing us into these international incursions where we're losing our sons and daughters, where the magnets of industry, the military-industrial complex, begin to accrue resources by making weapons and munitions and having spin-off companies. You know what's really interesting is after Japan was decimated, guess what? Where did America go? They went straight to Japan. They helped rebuild Japan, but they started building factories in Japan because labor would be cheaper in Japan. And then we had a whole wave of products from 1950 to about 1975, 1976, all made in Japan. About 25 years of Japanese dominance in the technological industry. One of the first people to go to Japan and start a factory there was a guy by the name of Louis Marx. And Louis Marx is the father of Barbara Marx Hubbard. And so Barbara Marx Hubbard, and all of her wonderful aspirations and her beautiful New Age visions of a next level world and holistic society, it's all built on the back of basically reparation, war slave wage labor. That's how her daddy made money. He was the toy king, and it was all done in Japan. But it was a lie that got us into that war. It may not have been a lie, but you're being told a lie. Because withholding is lying. Lance Armstrong withheld in a very aggressive way, but withholding is lying. So World War I, the reasons why we got there, right? The Lusitania. The Lusitania got us into World War I. It was filled with munitions. They were taking munitions to Europe. The Germans told people not to get on the ship. Why? Because they had intercepted a message that they knew that the Lusitania was bringing munitions to Europe. Now, the Germans have their own version of the lie, and they're fighting the war. And are they going to allow that ship to cruise through? So the Germans actually put ads in newspapers in New York City that told people not to get on the ship. Then, of course, there was posters, loose lips sink ships. Shh. It was a lie. It was a lie. Now, all of a sudden, the United States is indignant. We must go fight. We must go fight in that war. It's a lie. I'm not... Okay. I could probably save the biggest lie of the century. I'm going to save the biggest lie of the century for another show. I have to frame it in a way that is meaningful. Let's put it that way. But if we move forward, again, the layers of the lies begin to stack on top of one another. As we entered 1960, the transistor age, the space age, the United States of America was still a fairly innocent place. The civil rights wars, or the civil rights riots, they hadn't taken place. Feminism hadn't taken place. All these things in just a few short years would take on a much greater prominence. But in 1960, that really wasn't the case. In 1963, John F. Kennedy died. And you want to talk about a lie. This, by the way, is the bedrock lie. This is the foundational lie of America in the 20th century. This is the JFK assassination. And we have not recovered from that lie. If you really want to go back and untangle all the lies, all you got to do is untangle the JFK assassination. We can begin to see what takes place as a result of that. And once that was covered up, the lies they've stacked. Larger and larger and larger, deeper and deeper, bigger, wider. And it is a house of cards right now. An absolute house of cards. Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton lied. He lied and he got away with it. I did not have sexual relations with that woman. He did. He stood there in front of the American public and lied. And he got a wrist slap, and he was allowed to stay president, even though technically he'd been impeached. And all he had to do was agree to bomb the Balkans. And if somebody like his buddy Ron Brown crashed into the side of the mountain, not to say much about it. But he lied. And his lie was accepted. He was exonerated from the spirit of his lie, but he lied. The public exonerated him. Think about that. Lance Armstrong was, at that point in time, just getting ready to go through his battle with cancer and then take all the performance-enhancing drugs like everybody else did, and he's doing it in a place where the quote-unquote greatest leader in the free world is staring into the TV screen and lying. Lying. And then there's the travesties that take place during the Clinton administration. Waco. Are you kidding me? Waco. Kids died in Waco. They were burned to death in Waco. And the administration glossed over it. All they focused on was David Koresh. They lied. They absolutely lied. The lying is like cancer that's eating away at our ability to have a free and open society. It is a cancer that's eating away at us. What about what happened when Al Gore lost to George Bush in Florida? How many people, just raise your right hand right now if you think that that's how the election really turned out. Raise your hand. Lie. Lie, 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 lie. How about when John Kerry beat George Bush? How about that? And of course, they had the voting machines lie for humans, because that's what voting machines do. They just perpetuate a lie. They're programmed to lie. People are programmed to lie too, but at least they're machines. And so we had a staged election, a coup, really. I mean, we've had a coup since 1963, 11/22/1963. There's been a coup in this country. And most people don't understand that and know that. Why? Because we're being lied to. And when we're lied to, what happens with us? Lying is a virus. Lying is contagious. Lying is viral. We lie. We lie to ourselves. Why? Because the lie is coming straight down on top of us every single day. And then there's 9/11. 9/11, maybe the greatest lie ever, okay? Perhaps the greatest lie ever perpetuated. And you want to talk about 2 skyscrapers worth of denial. Sorry. This is really the nexus. This is the nexus of the lie, is 9/11. I was on Facebook last night, and I posted something about, I think it was a post on, it was a picture of Obama with the kid signing the new gun executive orders, and it was a picture with him, and then there was a picture of Hitler with kids, there was a picture of Mao with kids, there was a picture of Stalin with kids, and this is kind of a theme, a propagandistic theme that's used in dictatorial cultures or dictatorial governments. And what it does is it's supposed to engender goodwill and that there is a paternal relationship between the father of the land, or the fatherland, and the children of the father of the land, that he's taking care of them, he's thinking about their future, he's administering to them, and they're showing love for him. So this was a way to frame that. And then, of course, there was a discussion on guns and gun control. And there was a friend, she was a friend, and she was a friend of a fellow that was a very good friend of mine. Very good friend. And he died. And so I got to know her through him. And she's a nice lady. I enjoyed my time hanging out with her. But I enjoyed my friend, and she came along with the ride. You know what I mean? And she was okay enough. And so I tried to, maintain a friendship with this person, tangentially over the last couple of years. And she came onto my post and started to post all of these retorts to guns, gun control, and do we need this and do we need that? And, it's like, okay, I'm open to debate and talking to a certain extent, but if you're not open to my point of view, then really I'm not really going to hold a lot of space for you. And so I went to her page, and this was really something that pained me to do this. I went to her wall, and I looked at her wall, and I looked at the programming on her wall, and I'm sure she could probably look at my wall and go, who the fuck is this guy? He's nuts. He's a psycho, you know. He's a conservative, gun wacko, conspiracy theory psycho. But I looked at her wall, and I just said, you know, I can't have this person as my friend anymore. I just can't. Because the world is splitting in two, boys and girls. It's splitting in two. And I'm not sure if we're ever going to be able to be pulled back together again unless we have some kind of collective event that forces us, either real or staged, to become one people again. Because other than that, we're moving further apart. These ships are headed in different directions. And I just looked at her page, and you know, she's got this, you know, big thing for the Brady Bill, and this for guns, and this and that. I mean, she's really taken this on as a cause celeb. And I'm like, you know, I just can't. I can't go there. I can't go there. And I had to say goodbye to that person. And the reason why I had to say goodbye was because I don't think there would be any way we could have any kind of meaningful exchange. And I'm sure she thought that she was doing really well. She was doing the right thing. It was kind of like after when John Lennon was killed, another lie, by the way. After John Lennon was killed, Harry Nilsson, his good friend, basically gave up his music career and just went after guns and gun control and gun lobby. Harry Nilsson died about 20 years too soon. Had Harry Nilsson still been around today, he'd be a big star, trust me. So I had to say goodbye to that person. And the reason why, this is what it all boils down to, is because I believe that there is a demarcation. There's a demarcation in the psyche and in the collective experience, and that demarcation is 9/11. And you can pretty much figure out where people are, where they're going to be based on how they feel about 9/11. There are people that are going to be open to the fact that 9/11 didn't occur the way we were told, and there are other people that will just shut you down, and they won't even consider it. Because to consider it would be to two things. Number one, it would potentially shatter their belief system. And number two, they would now see themselves as a tinfoil hat-wearing, paranoid conspiracy theorist. And guess what happens if you're that? You are ostracized. People don't love you. Your friends leave you. You know, you are considered a wacko. It's a dangerous place to be. And if you want any kind of social acceptance, you will not go there. It's a prison cage, actually, is what it is. People have this belief, and so therefore they're limited, and they're stuck in a jail cell of their own mental construct because they can't get out of it. They can't look beyond it. And the new version, the first version of that was Mel Gibson in Conspiracy Theory. I mean, he was a complete mess. The guy was a basket case, an absolute basket case. Like, here it is, boys and girls. This is what happens when you start thinking about this stuff. You wind up living in an apartment in New York City, and you eat your can out of foods, or your food out of cans, and eventually you go into a witness protection program or something like that, you know. And now the new version is Alex Jones. And do people want to look like that? Do people want to be that polarizing? Do they want to emulate that? No, they don't. So this is why things like 9/11 are not really still openly discussed, and yet it is the greatest lie. It is the greatest lie of our time. Now we're just stacking the lies. After that, it's like, you know, boom. Who cares? Who cares anymore? By the way, O.J. Simpson was another huge lie. Huge. O.J. Simpson getting off. Huge lie. Enormous. We can add that to the mix. Do you see why? Do you see why lying is something that is endemic to our culture because it's supported and perpetuated either for profit and gain or control. And that's why people continue to lie, because they are enabled by a culture that in and of itself is steeped in enormous lies. How can the individual, or how can we hope to come to some kind of collective moment of truth or honesty when our institutions lie? They lie right at us. They stare us in the eyes and lie. Ben Bernanke, Tim Geithner, we don't know where that money went. Are you kidding me? Trillions of dollars and you don't know where it went? Well, at least on some level, maybe they're not lying, but they're certainly avoiding the truth. I'll bet you they know where it went. I bet you they know where every dime went. But they're not going to cop to it, so therefore they're lying. This is why people lie. Now, people need to take personal accountability for it, obviously, but our society is not a society that promotes truth. Our society has quote-unquote reality shows, where, in fact, reality shows aren't even about reality at all. No, they're about simulated reality in a place that maybe might even look like a place, but might not even be that place. You look at a show like Storage Wars, a reality show. Well, the guy comes out from Storage Wars and says, it's all fake. You know, the people are fake. The situations are fake. The boobs are fake. It's all fake. It's all a lie. And that's supposed to be your reality show. I mean, can you begin to sense the cognitive dissonance here? Okay, the cognitive dissonance is so piercing that we can't even hear ourselves when we have to determine what's real and what's not. The cognitive dissonance drowns out the voice of our conscience. And then we begin to make choices that we're not always that thrilled about. Look, everybody lies. We all do. We've been lying for a long time. I've lied. I went through a period of my life where I was a terrible liar. Awful. I hated myself. Absolutely hated myself. And I'm still trying to get rigorous to the point where I'm, doing my best to be real with who I am and what I'm sharing with you. Because if I'm not real with myself, I can't talk to you in a way that you can listen and hear me and respect me, which is why sometimes I spill my guts out here, because it kind of helps me. Now, it does help me. It helps keep me as real as I can. And when I get busted on shit, man, I don't like myself. And we all get busted on stuff. Nobody's perfect. I'm no saint or paragon of truth, although I do the best I can. But I went through a point in my life where I was just so in denial. Oh my God! And the thing about lies is the more that you lie, the more lies you have to tell in order to keep the lie alive. And now all of a sudden you're living to keep the lie alive. You're not even living anymore. It's another prison cell. It's another sentence. It's jail time of the mind. So where are we now? We're still deeply steeped in a lie. Do you know Joe Biden, President of the United States, the Vice President of the United States of America? Do you know he ran for president once before? This was back when they were having a boat race between Clinton and Gebhardt and guys like that, and Biden was in the mix. And I think Biden got fairly far down the path, and then he gave a speech, and he totally stole the speech. It was some speech that they used in England. Another liar, absolute liar. People, unfortunately, what happens is that people are rewarded for their lies. Because if you're lying and you're successful, then you're lying with other successful people, and you're lying together, and you're all complicit, and you're all lying to keep the lie alive, and so forth. So then well, I got the lie on you, you got the lie on me. It's like that movie it was based on the L. Ron Hubbard book, Battleship Earth. Right? Have you ever seen that movie? It's a terrible movie, but I highly suggest you watch it, because the main theme in that film is about leverage and how the cyclos use leverage against one another. And leverage comes in when people lie. Oh, he's lying. He's lying in some part of his life. I now have leverage against that person. I can use that against them. He's been caught. He's been dishonest. He's been deceitful. And everybody at that level does their damn best to get leverage. Trust me. And so at a high level, there are people telling each other's lies. Plain and simple. But here we have Lance Armstrong. Just to bring it to the present, we have Lance Armstrong, and it is the biggest story in the news today. The biggest story in the news is Lance Armstrong. It's not all the strange anomalies and perhaps lies that are being told around Sandy Hook. No, it's not those. It is Lance Armstrong. It's not the lies or the deceit or the lack of truth that has come to the surface with Fast and Furious. Nope. It's not what happened in Benghazi. Nope. And what about the capture and killing of Osama bin Laden? How true is that? Well, they've got a movie of it coming out, so it must be true. I mean, you see where we're going with all this. And we have Lance Armstrong, who's become a psychopomp. He's a psychopomp of the lie. He's a wicker man. And I'm not excusing him, but this is what's happening. This is what's being put in front of us. He's a fall guy. He's an object now of hate, scorn, and vilification. We used to be a Christian nation, by the way. We are not a Christian nation anymore. I don't know what we are. In a Christian nation, we're here to theoretically forgive. For who are we to judge? Cast the first stone. Let he amongst you cast the first stone. We don't do that anymore. Now we are so quick to judge. We are so quick to render public opinion. And not just render public opinion. That would be neutral. We're here now to render public opinion with scorn and vilification and hate. And it comes from both sides too. Trust me, nobody's immune on this. We have somebody in office for president. All of his records are sealed. How do we know? How do we know anything about this man? Omission. Omission is lying. Withholding is lying. There's no public record of what he did or where he went. There are people that were very popular at some of the institutions that he went to, like Columbia. Yale. Is he Harvard or Yale? Yeah, he went to Yale. And they don't recall him. They don't remember him. They didn't see him. Wayne Allen Root, who made a lot of money gambling on football and running for vice president of the Libertarian Party, he was at school with Obama, theoretically at the same time Obama was, at Columbia, New York, and guess what? Doesn't remember him. Records are sealed. We got a document. There may or may not be a real birth certificate. I mean, come on. And we're being asked to tell the truth, to be held to a standard of accountability that institutionally is not being practiced at all, one iota, none. None. It's not. None. Open change. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to close Gitmo. And guess what? Nothing. Lie, 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 lie. Lie. It's all a lie. And as a result, it's all hypocritical. And then you get Manti Te. Let's talk about Manti Te for a second. I see 619. I'm going to bring you on in a moment. Let's talk about Manti Te. Manti Te that boy is troubled. I mean, Lance Armstrong did what he did because pretty much everybody else was doing it. And I have a theory, by the way, about performance-enhancing drugs. I think they make you an asshole. It's like methamphetamine. You ever been around somebody who's been on methamphetamine for a while? They're impossible to be around. Hell, I have one energy drink, and I turn into Genghis Khan. I mean, so can you imagine what happens when people are taking these performance-enhancing drugs? They're dicks. Barry Bonds, talk about another example of lying. Barry Bonds was every bit of an asshole that Lance Armstrong was, and perhaps even more. And you know what? Barry Bonds' records, they're going to stand. He's not going to have those home runs taken away from him. He's not. And yet he was caught using performance-enhancing drugs, and he lied. Oh, yeah, I just used it. I didn't know. I didn't know what was wrong. I didn't know what those creams were about. I just used them. Barry Bonds was hitting 70 home runs a year when most men in that sport are shutting down. They're lucky if they can hit 20, and he's hitting 70, and his head has grown about 5 sizes, and he's irascible and nasty and mean and cruel to people. Again, I believe an outgrowth of the drug, which affects the personality, and I'm sure it shaped Lance's personality as well. I mean, you got to have some of that to begin with, right? But I think it exacerbates that. And yet nobody is calling out Barry Bonds. You know, nobody's asking for their money back. You know, I mean, again, we have to kind of place all this together and just look at how ludicrous it is, how hypocritical it is. That we're supposed to now buy into an official story from a place that is really pretty sketchy, to be honest with you. It makes me sick. It makes me absolutely sick to think that this is the world that I live in, that this is the world that I have to navigate through with my son, and to tell him that here is how the game is played. And if you want to play the game the sacred way, you gotta be honest, you gotta be real. And guess what? And you may not get ahead. You just may not get ahead. You may have somebody that lies, that will step all over you, just because they want the glory, the gold, the riches, the 40 pieces of silver, whatever they are. Manti Te needs help. That boy needs help. I don't know what's going on with him. I don't. I mean, here's a guy, obviously a fairly good football player. He was up for the Heisman Trophy. You know, he was right there with Johnny Manziel. Led Notre Dame to a really good season, best season in years. They played in the title game, mostly due in part to Manti Te and his inspirational play. Why was his play inspirational? Because he had a fictitious girlfriend. He had an invisible girlfriend. The female version of George Glass, if you've ever watched The Brady Bunch. His own, you know, Polynesian version of Kaiser Sose. I mean, he had a fictitious girlfriend. And Notre Dame is coming out and saying that he's a victim. Is Notre Dame lying? Penn State sure as hell lied, didn't they? They lied. They kept Jerry Sandusky in action and all those other guys. We have no idea. You have no idea what happened with Penn State. None. If you think you do, you don't have any clue. If you think it was just Jerry Sandusky and Joe Pa, you're eating the lie. But Notre Dame came right out. I was listening to the AD of Notre Dame, and he basically said something. It was really interesting what he said. He said that the innocence of a very important person had been shattered with this event. He wasn't talking about Manti Te. He was talking about himself. See, that's how he told the lie. He knows that Manti Te was making this shit up. I mean, let's give him the benefit of the doubt, okay? Let's say that Manti Te was being catfished, which, by the way, if that guy who has that show on MTV, Catfish, This is Manti Te, the best thing's ever happened to him. But let's say he was catfish. Let's say for 3 years, okay, you had an internet relationship with someone. Or maybe somebody was calling you and they weren't that person. 3 years. At some point along the way, he began to embellish the story. I sent her flowers. The casket was closed at 9 a.m. His girlfriend died of leukemia on the same day that his grandmother died. Now here we have Manti Te using the grief of his grandmother dying and putting it onto this fictitious girlfriend. He's projecting it onto this fictitious girlfriend. So now he can have a relatively, quote-unquote, real emotional experience, like his girlfriend dies of leukemia the same day that his grandmother dies. Excuse me. That becomes the narrative for Manti Te and his season. Oh, boy, look at him. He's pointing up to the air. Oh, he's getting all this support and all this love. And it was a lie for 3 years. You would think that after 3 years, this guy would have at some point in time tried to see this woman. 3 years. Are you kidding me? He only goes to school, 9 months out of the year? I'm sure he goes back to Hawaii to go surf and do a little choom, I mean, come on. You'd think that during that time you would have 3 months. He's a guy. He's in college. When I was in college, at his age, if I wasn't having sex, I was banging my head against the frickin' wall. And he goes 3 years without it? I mean, come on, Mormon or not, it doesn't really matter. You at least want to see the girl. You want to kiss her. I mean, it makes no sense. None. And yet Notre Dame enabled him. The sports media enabled him. Boom, fooled again. Ha ha, isn't that funny? And this guy needs help. I mean, he needs help. Whether or not he created it or enabled it, I mean, that is just, that boy's got some psychological chains that he's got to unlock. And what's really interesting, and here's how the lie is perpetuated again. What's really interesting is that Mark Schlereth, I believe, was on ESPN. I'm not a huge Mark Schlereth fan. I'm just not. He was talking about, and this is where it gets a little tricky, okay? He was talking about two things. One is that how, because of the way that Manti Te was theoretically deceived, that we need more control over the internet. Do you see where this is headed, by the way? More control over the internet. More control. More control. More control. People are aberrant. Their aberrant behavior is spurred on by memes, by psychological conditioning, by trauma, by entrainment. Aberrant behavior can be exacerbated. Aberrant behavior can be triggered. But he's coming out and saying, well, maybe we need more control on the internet. Yeah, right. But he also said, they asked him, they said, so is this going to affect Manti Te's draft stock? He said, no. He said, some team will take a chance on him. Of course. Look, I like pro football, but, there's a murderer playing for the Baltimore Ravens. He's playing tomorrow. He's going to be lionized. They'll show him on TV. I'd say Sunday, rather. And they'll show him on TV, and they'll talk about the great career he's had, and how he's been a source of inspiration. This guy killed somebody. Ray Lewis killed a man. He was with two other guys, and it was late night in Atlanta after the Super Bowl, and they killed two young guys, and those two young guys are never coming back. Ray Lewis was found to be an accessory, did no time, none. The other guys did a little bit of time. They got out. There was a civil suit. Some money was exchanged. Ray Lewis is a murderer, okay? He's a murderer. Lance Armstrong never killed anybody. He didn't kill anybody. He may have killed people's careers. Never killed anybody. Ray Lewis killed somebody. And guess what? He's playing pro football. Not only is he playing pro football, but he's got a big fat contract waiting for him with ESPN when he's done. He gets to be an announcer. That's Ray Lewis. Leonard Little killed 2 people drunk driving. He got to play. He got to play pro football. His contract wasn't denied. In fact, he was busted, I think, 2 other times after that for drunk driving. And yet Lance Armstrong now is strung up on the yew tree and sacrificed. The Wicker Man. By the way, do you know where Manti Te went to high school? He went to the Punahou Academy, which is the same high school that produced one Barack Hussein Obama, or at that time, Barry Soetoro. Interesting connection. It probably means nothing, but it's an interesting connection. So this is where we are. We are deep in the midst of the lie, and we have Lance Armstrong coming up as an object of vilification and scorn, as a symbol of hate. And I don't think it's going to end there. Let's go to the phones and let's see who's here, what they have to say. Is this working? Hello there. Hello?
Hello, Robert?
Yeah.
Hey, listen, nice show. My name is Chaplain Steve. I'm in your chat room.
Hey, what's going on?
And I was just listening, and I just want to make 3 quick points and then throw it back to you. Thank you for talking about lying by not disclosing, because that's how a lot of people lie nowadays. They just don't disclose the pertinent facts. You know, when you're buying a car or they're talking about any type of business deal, people think, you know, because they don't disclose the facts, they're not lying, and it's just wrong, okay?
Right.
Also, the Notre Dame thing, you know, people are trying to blame it on an illness, and it's the lie about the lie that I'm worried about, not the guy who did the hoax. It's this guy, after they found out that it was all false, he took a dive for Notre Dame. So I'm not surprised, because they knew about it and it was great for ratings. The only problem is they're trying to increase their ratings off of someone who died. And that's not really too cool in life, you know, making money off of dead people or, you know, exploiting them when they're dead. And then the third thing is people like Lance Armstrong, even Notre Dame, they pay big money to PR firms to handle the press. It happens in the election on both sides of the party. They pay millions and millions of dollars. And Lance Armstrong, he has his own PR firm, and they know what to do. They know what to say. So that insulates them from everything. So I'm sure you know that already, but it just adds fuel, you know, to the fire, because really he didn't admit to anything. You know, he's answering yes and no to Oprah's questions. He's not admitting anything. Do you think people can see through that? I'll give it back to you. Thanks. Good show.
Yeah, you're welcome. People can see through it, obviously. And, you know, I don't want to get into Lance Armstrong's head. By the way, it's not Lance Armstrong isn't even his name. His name is Lance Gunderson. Okay, so maybe there is kind of a disconnect. By the way, if you really want to know, my name is Robert Morris. There we go. That's my real name. I became Robert Phoenix in 1996 when I was at when I was in Atlanta and I saw I was doing terror on the streets. Okay, so that's my real name, Robert Morris. But I go by Robert Phoenix. So there we go. No disconnect there. All right. You can look me up, whatever you want to do. So I don't want to presuppose that I want to get into Lance Armstrong's head or to understand what he's trying to do right now. I would think that he's probably trying to come as clean as he can while not incriminating himself anymore, because he's going to face legal hurdles and barriers that most of us can only begin to imagine in our worst possible nightmares. So what he's trying to do is he's trying to come clean without coming too clean, because the more he says, theoretically, the more he will set himself up for potential future judgments. they could go back to this interview and say, well, this is what you said here, and it's already out there. It's in the court of public opinion. So I understand on some level why he's doing that. But at the same time, I mean, if we are led to believe that this could be a cathartic moment, a public cathartic moment, that he would have to come clean with everything. And then we could all go, oh, don't we all feel better now? Oh, Lance has really, really come clean. Oh, I feel better. I feel more whole. You know, I feel a little more truthful in my own life. Ah, jeez. Let's welcome him back. Come on, man. Everybody fucks up. Ah, love ya. There's something else. Oh, another lie. Another lie? Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods, ladies and gentlemen. Biggest lie, biggest illusion on the frickin' planet for about a decade when it came to sports. Another lie. Tiger. He was, oh my God. Where do I start with Tiger Woods? How about his Delta Force father, who made Tiger Woods into an MK Ultra experimental super athlete? I could start there, but I wouldn't end there, because once his father died, that's when Tiger Woods' world really fell apart. Tiger Woods was a robot. He was a robot. He was a good-looking, clean-cut, mixed-race, looking more like a black American robot who paved the way for Barack Obama to eventually become president of the United States. Tiger Woods, mixed race, solid, right? Embraced by corporate America, Buick, Tag Heuer. He paved the way for Barack Obama to be accepted by the American public. And then, interestingly enough, once Barack Obama got elected, Tiger Woods was pretty much done for. He was over. Earl Woods, his father, gone. And then he goes off on his screwing spree. By the way, he's back in the news again. He's offering his ex-wife, Eileen, $300 million just to come back. $300 million, straight up payment. It's hers no matter what. She's already gotten a huge chunk of junk. What does she need with all that money? I mean, she's already gotten, you know, for lack of a better term, my language, a shitload of money from him. Why does she need that much more money? Because she was scorned? Is it because she's going to plan on living forever and investing that $300 million in the latest, you know, virtual reality, cybernetic technology? And so she can spend her money for the next 200 years? I mean, is that why she needs all that cash? It's sad. Michael Jordan lied. Absolutely lied. Why do you think Michael Jordan had to leave basketball? Because he wanted to play baseball? No, you wanted a new challenge? Hell no. Michael Jordan was asked to leave the NBA because it was getting too hot. David Stern knew that Michael Jordan was tied into professional gamblers in a very big way. And of course, Michael Jordan lost his father, James, under very mysterious circumstances. Wonder what that was about. Shortly thereafter, Michael was allowed to play pro basketball again. That's right. And if you are in the sporting world, you will know that Michael Jordan is almost every bit of an asshole as Lance Armstrong is. This is what people have said. He's not a good guy, Michael Jordan. But he's Michael Jordan. He made Nike billions of dollars. A lie. It's all a lie. Lie, 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 lie. All right, I've got 20 minutes left in the show. 20 minutes left. If you want to confess something, if there's a lie that you don't feel good about, you want to confess, you can use the next 20 minutes. To do that, you can be anonymous. You say, I did this. Get it off your chest. Confession time if you want it. I'm just opening it up to you. 347-308-8995, 347-308-8995. We all omit. We all leave out the little details, the sordid little details. There are things I'm not proud about. Nope. The last 3 years of my life, after I got a divorce, my finances went to hell. There are things that I didn't pay. I couldn't afford to pay them. Why? Because I was trying to do this and get this off the ground. And you have to devote a fair amount of time in order to do this. And my finances did not do well, and I wasn't responsible for them either. And and there are bills that piled up and things I walked away from, and I'm not proud of that. But I'm being honest with you. I'm doing the best I can to change, some of the things that aren't really all that pleasant about me. I'm here. I'm making a stand. We got to make a stand at some point in time. And so this is where I'm at, and I'm just telling you, I'm not proud of it. A little omission. I've had some bad misfortune financially the last few years. A lot of it's self-inflicted. So I'm being honest with you and doing my best to crawl out of the pit, just like everyone else. I had a conversation with a very dear friend last night, and she was telling me, this is about money, a friend of hers, an ex-lover, longtime friend, had been helping her out a little bit each month on rent because he really cares about her. And she's trying to, move things along in her life. And he got his latest pay stub from the job that he works. I won't tell you what the job is. It does involve some connection with the military. And he was making $1,000 less a month based on what's happened just over the course of the last few months with taxes. And he went from making, and I know it doesn't sound like much, it's not, $3,800 a month to, I think, $2,800 a month. Think about that. That's $1,000 less a month that guy can bank on. And it's because of what happened with the fiscal cliff. And we are in austerity now, ladies and gentlemen. That's another lie. That's another omission. We are in austerity. We are rapidly approaching the Grecian level of austerity. And if we go through this song and dance, this, the fiscal cliff, the debt ceiling, the the interest-bearing back door, whatever it is, we continue to go to these crisis moments where crisis intervention is employed, and out of the crisis intervention, we have crisis-based measures which wind up gouging our ability to earn. If these things continue to happen, and they will, we are going to be in a Greece-like austerity zone before you know it. I was at the grocery store 2 days ago. I went to the spice section. I couldn't find a jar of spices for less than $5. Some spices were $9, $10. These are just spices. And this is where we're headed. And this guy now is dealing with austerity. This is it. I mean, we're in uncharted territory now. And that's omission. We're not being told that we're being given an austerity program. No, it's happening under the guise of taxation. And you won't hear about it from the media. They're not going to tell you about it. They're not going to say that austerity measures were enacted against Americans just before the first of the year with the fiscal cliff approaching. No. They're not going to tell you that. Why? Because that's not what they want you to hear. They want you to hear that you're covering for the debt, or you're covering for the debt ceiling, or whatever it is. You're doing your share. That's a mission. Are we feeling any better now? I just wanted to have a show like this because I think what happens is that we lose sight of how we get to certain places. By the way, the caller was right about PR. PR is a really tricky thing. You know how PR was born? The first press release in this country was optioned by the Rockefeller family. And they had had an accident at, I believe, one of their, I think it was a mine. It was either a mine or a gas field. It was an accident, and workers died and got hurt. And they drafted the first press release to get out in front of the news so that they could begin to shape public opinion about what happened by the press release. So the whole concept of PR is really about crisis management, which is what the caller alluded to, crisis management. Sometimes it can be about promotion, whatever, but it's about crisis management. So the very first press release in this country, the very first act of professional public relations, courtesy of the Rockefellers. So yes, we get spin, we get handle, we get all that stuff. It's what people get paid to do. All right, we've got 11 minutes left. I'm still holding the space for anybody that wants to come through that door, through that gateway, through that portal, and confess something. Completely anonymous. You don't have to tell your name. You can just confess something. And you can free yourself of perhaps one lie that you're holding on to. 347-308-8995. If you don't want to do it, that's fine. I'll keep talking to the end of the show. And we'll go from there. What's really interesting is, are you ready for this? Think about this. While we have Lance Armstrong, who's being accused of lying, while we have Manti Te, who's either being accused of mental illness or being a liar, right? What's being vilified right now? Question mark? The truth movement. Truthers are being vilified. Why? Because people are asking questions about Sandy Hook. People are trying to figure out who Gene Rosen is and why his story keeps changing. People are trying to figure out how many people were there at Sandy Hook. Was it 2? Was it 3? Was it 5? Was it 6? Was it 7? What about the early pieces of information that came out and said they had another man in handcuffs besides Adam Lanza? What about the fact that the gun that was supposed to be used was in the trunk of the car and that it wasn't used? I mean, people are trying to ask questions around this, and what's happening is they're being labeled conspiracy theorists or truthers. So here people are trying to get to the truth, and the people of the lie are manipulating them and trying to push them back down. And they're really trying, what they're really doing is they're turning truth into an aberration. They're turning it into a sickness. They're turning the quest for truth into mental illness. That's what's happening. Now that is sophisticated. That is some slick and sophisticated shit, if you ask me. Here, people just want to get to the bottom of things, and the kickback, the pushback is, you're sick motherfuckers. You're paranoid. How about that? That has got to be the greatest script flip of all time. And so now what happens? Well, we wind up promoting the lie. And now because we don't want to be labeled, sick or insane or paranoid or conspiratorial, because now it's kind of dangerous too. I got to tell you that right now. It's kind of dangerous to have that position, because what happens? You've got these people on the other end of the experience who are practicing their 2 minutes of hate. You're hateful. No, we're not hateful. I got into this on Facebook with a woman I didn't even know. And it was around Sandy Hook. And it was interesting. Let's put it that way. And I wound up eventually just sort of saying, hey, forget Sandy Hook. How do you feel about 9/11? She wouldn't even answer my question. Wouldn't even answer my question. She said, I think you're paranoid. Have a good day. I wish you well. And that was it. Lockdown, mind lock. And this is where we are. You decide to pursue the truth. You decide to push beyond the culture of the lie. And you, my friend, are vilified, scorned, and you are put in a box, sometimes a padded box. And if you continue to go in that direction, well, who knows? But if you support the lie, just like everybody else is supporting the lie, well, guess what? You have social acceptance, love, money, at the very least, some form of community based on deep levels of denial. All right, I think I've ranted enough today, and apparently everybody that listens to my show is absolutely and utterly honest. Thank God for that, because nobody's calling in. No wonder I enjoyed my chat room and this experience so much. I've got a bunch of honest and loving and truthful people. Right on. On Monday, I'm going to have an author. Her name is Meadow Lynn, and we're going to get into food and the spiritual and vibrational aspects of food based on color and shape and scent. And I'm really looking forward to talking with her. I'm getting into food lately. Jupiter here in Austin is in my 4th house. So I've really got into food. I'll tell you what I did this morning is my kid has a science fair project, and I'm working with him on it. We're doing something on molecular gastronomy. And I made an appointment to go down to this restaurant called Barley Swine, which is in Austin. It's the hottest restaurant in Austin right now. You can barely get a table there. There's no reservations. You got to wait around. And so I went there a couple days ago, and I asked them if they would like to, work with me and my son and have them learn a little more about molecular gastronomy. And they said yes, and we went down there today, and we saw, a lot of the pieces of equipment that they use to do really fascinating things with food. And we saw some molecular gastronomic transformations happen right before our eyes, simple stuff. And it was great. Absolutely loved it. Fantastic. And I'm excited about food. And on Monday, you'll get to experience my excitement when I have Meadow Lynn on the show, and we'll get into the spiritual representation of food and how to really understand it from a place of scent and color and vibration, and how to actually cook with certain foods and bring those things out. I think it's going to be an absolutely fascinating show. I'm looking forward to that. And then on Wednesday, we're back with navigating, and on Friday, who knows where we're going to go. I'm trying to line up some more guests, and I'll bet you by next Friday I'll have a couple of good ones. All right, boys and girls, it's been a great 90-minute exercise. Thank you for allowing me to vent about truth and lying in America, and the irony and the paradox of it all. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay open to what's possible. This is Robert Phoenix. You've been listening to the Friday FARcast. Join me Monday with author and food guru Meadow Lynn. Until then, have a great weekend and go 49ers.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.